And we are live and recording. Give me 1 sec, Adam Gordon, and 1 sec, everyone else, because as we go live, I actually need to go live in multiple places now, because Brainfood Live is multicasting simultaneously on Crowdcast, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. So someone looking at my LinkedIn profile now, tell me whether they see this show, because it should be happening. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. This is episode 45. We're talking authentic writing, authentic job descriptions. Very exciting show ahead of us today. And I'm very pleased to be back in Blighty, actually, because I've been traveling around a little bit over the last couple of weeks. I think our last 2 shows I've actually been doing them in South Africa somewhere. Which was super exciting to be in and to try and wrestle with the conditions out over there. But great to be back in the UK, at least for a short period. So welcome everyone who's on the show. Great to see loads of people signing up to this event. Hopefully you're all enjoying it. Before we kick off, a quick word for our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we cannot do this show. Episode 45 is sponsored by Video My Job. Anybody who hasn't checked this company out, they really should do it. They basically allow you to shoot an employer branded video right with your mobile device. Really, really cool product. Lots of our friends are using it. Sainsbury's have used it. Yodel have used it. Lots of interesting and sort of very fast branding is what I like about Video My Job. So do check them out. They're our sponsors this week. Anyway, I'm joined by my kind of co-presenter, co-pilot, formerly chief promoter. He's kind of in the top 3 now. He's dropping rapidly. But it's Adam Gordon. Adam, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, fine. I don't think I'm dropping rapidly. I think I had a bit of a hiatus there, but I was back with a bang on Sunday, as I normally do. I shared my favorite articles from the Brainfood on LinkedIn. Got another 50 subscribers for you, I think. And
you know what?
Yeah.
You've probably exhausted your subscriber kind of reach with the Brainfood stuff. I think probably half of Glasgow I'm attributing to you. So thank you for that. Until you move around the place, then yeah, you kind of lost your value to the Brainfood, I'm afraid, Adam.
In that kind of bell curve, I think I'm probably down here in the trough of disillusionment somewhere. That's what my network thinks of me now.
That's probably true. Aren't we all there? Anyway, how you been? And so life is good, I hope. What's been going on?
So what's been going on? I think the probably the only really interesting thing that I've done, apart from trying to run my business recently, is RL100, and they're sponsors of the show, I think, or certainly contributors. And we had an absolutely brilliant session at the end of January, and the bit that I was involved with was all about values, and how do talent acquisition people use company values and purpose and business drivers in terms of developing more better people to come work in the organization, and how do they actually influence the CEO and C-level people in terms of what those should look like in terms of attracting new people. So that's something that I spent a bit of time on for a few weeks, and I spent a bit of time discussing this subject online, and got a lot of people agreeing with some of my perspectives, which are that talent acquisition shouldn't be in HR, and a lot of people disagreeing with that as well. So I spent a bit of time debating while I've been on the bench for Brainfood for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, RL100 is one of our friends. Obviously, Jamie Leonard and his crew there have done a fantastic job of curating and creating community. Definitely get to Wreckfest, everybody. If you're going to do one event this year, Wreckfest in London is going to be immense. And that's run by Jamie and his crew. And I would imagine all of the RL100 Recruitment Leaders 100, by the way, for people who don't know, will be in attendance. Anyway, that's all good. Let's talk about the Brainfood from last week. What did you read it? And if you did, what was interesting in that particular issue, Adam?
Yeah. Okay. So I did. And first one is the article, which is for academics in particular. I think it said, "Is email making professors stupid?" or something like that.
Yeah.
The problem is, and it's good that we're doing this session today on I'm going to chunk it up and call it communication and recruitment.
Yep, happy with that.
Email is a regular source of distraction, and it has been for a long time. Interrupts your day, gets you focused on doing little tasks for other people that are non-scheduled. However, I don't think it's the biggest culprit, because I think that actually internal communication tools like Slack and Teams and things like that are even worse, because people feel they're entitled to encroach on your day if you're visibly online. Instant messaging and things like that, people feel like you will give them a response. And so, we are all plagued by too much communication coming in from too many different channels, all marked as priority. How do we get on with our own jobs? I think one way is to do what Bill Berman does, and that is ignore every channel of communication except for maybe one. So if you try and talk to him anywhere apart from Messenger, you're not going to get a response. So I did find that article really interesting, but it's not new news, but it is, we all should be aware of it, because it impacts on the way we communicate with everybody else in our business and productivity for everybody.
You know what? I don't think you should turn it all off. I mean, I do appreciate Alex's comment there. And sort of Bill, I think is definitely had. I think you need a strategy. So whatever suits you probably works best. But it is the case. I think we've got to take action ourselves in not being too intrusive. So it's all about that unscheduled messaging that is annoying, I think. The demand for time. And I think we're moving to a world where essentially we need to shift from synchronous communications to asynchronous as a default, meaning we should basically respect the other person's time, and they will get to it if required, rather than forcing immediate action or forcing a phone call and so on. With Slack, I'm with you. I was in way too many groups. I've had to switch them all off. Still in them as a dormant member, but I kind of don't talk to me there. I can't handle it. And these days it's basically WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. If you need me, get me there. Otherwise, it's going to be tough to get through an inbox. Basically, tough to get through LinkedIn and elsewhere. So everyone read that link. I've just shared it in the chat stream there. Well worth checking out. Okay, what else was interesting, Adam?
So I don't know who Skilled are, because I didn't bother looking up. I didn't actually look at who they are. However, they're like sort of top trends and themes to look out for in 2020. Was really good. Yes,
it was.
I enjoyed your input on the candidate engagement paradigm shift. One person, every single time he writes or talks, I listen to everything that he says, is William Tincup.
Yep, absolutely.
And, I mean, he's definitely in my top 3 globally of people to listen to when it comes to recruitment and anything around candidate experience and that kind of thing. And he talked about micro experiences being something that we need to be making a lot more use of in terms of recruitment. And I do look at the way that talent acquisition teams design candidate journeys, and they put a lot of emphasis on blunt aspects of the journeys, such as what does the application phase look like? Okay, the application phase is one of maybe 30 different phases of you going from being a stranger to actually working in that organization. So little things, lots of little things like, what's the responder message when I actually apply? What does that say? How's it written? Thank you for your message, or nothing. It's just like, well, did they get it or not? Thank you for your application. We'll consider it and get back to you. That's a bit better than getting nothing. Something with a bit of personality, something with a bit of something unexpected, something with a bit of value for you as a human, an invitation to join a community, or giving something, leading with value and giving them something.
You know what? Our friend Stan Vasovic is a very, very big player in that, in thinking of you need to give someone something at every message. Like just give them an option, join this. Hey, check this out. It's totally fine. But don't come out with nothing, number one. And if you come out with something, don't come up with, one of those canned messages that is basically a registration of nothing. So yeah, William Tincup, definitely check him out. I'm going to be in San Francisco next week. I hope I'm going to see William actually there. Actually, he's not in San Francisco, but he is. He might be be in Bay Area at the time when I'm there. So hopefully, if he is, I'll look forward to connecting with him then. And by the way, Skilled, they're a Luxembourgish, I believe, business, and they're a HR tech company. I didn't know them either. They just asked me to say, "Hey, listen, do you want to answer this question?" I answered it, and I found myself in their book. And yeah, having read through the book, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. They had some really great commentary from lots of interesting people. So everyone should check that out. Skilled.com, link I've just shared on the chat stream there. Okay, one more thing before we bring our guests on, Adam. What else is interesting for you on Brainfood last week?
Right, one more. I normally include one that's a sourcing related issue. And was it Glenn Guttmacher's?
Yes.
Right. Okay. How to get behind paywalled articles. Now, you might think, what's that got to do with sourcing? Actually, just because I can get to work out how to read the Wall Street Journal for free, or the FT or whatever for free, that you would think, okay, that's not really sourcing. However, the actual workarounds to do that, they are really, really useful for unlocking content that you might find on places like GitHub and other places where it's not immediately visible to non-members. So skills training for sourcers. I take a look at that article. It's really fun.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that. Glenn was actually on at me to say, "Hey, Hung, put this into Brainfood," and I took a little while to do it, and I think he might have been a bit upset. So, Glenn, please don't be upset. We just had too much Brainfood to fit you in as soon as when it came published, but I was always going to go in somewhere. Glenn's a really, really smart guy, great sourcer, one of the original gangsters, I think, when it comes down to doing this type of stuff. I was in two minds because obviously now we need to start thinking about the ethics of what recruiters and sourcers do. Is it the right thing to start breaking into various places and what have you? So I was in two minds when I was sharing this. But it went out publicly in any case on SourceCon, which is a big distribution network itself. And I thought, okay, let's have a look at the technique and what have you. It might be useful for you to learn a few things. And basically, in line with what we were talking about before, last couple of shows about how recruiters need to be a little bit more technically literate. Stuff like you understand how websites work. And it should make you a better recruiter if you knew a little bit more about it. Anyway.
Quick
Thanks
question.
for that, Adam. Go ahead.
You just said too much brain food, and you know how you can become, how too much of anything is bad for you.
Yep.
Is too much brain food bad for you? Can have too many bananas. Is potassium? You get potassium poisoning and stuff. Is too much brain food bad for you?
100%. I think you could sit there and just read it all day. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of joy involved in learning, but at some point we need to apply those learnings, or we need to kind of take time to embed them in. And some of the hard work I find in learning, I'm not doing as much of, when you need to revise for things and get some synthesis and all of the ideas you're getting, those things that's where you get real breakthroughs, when you have the time to do that. But at the moment for me, because there's so much great content out there and I'm trying to curate things to produce the newsletter, I'm finding that actually I'm skimming a lot and I'm not really taking deeper dives when I should do. So answer to the question, absolutely yes. Okay, let's move on to the topic. We've got Katrina Kibben coming and also Mitch Sullivan joining as well. Two heroes of ours, two friends of ours, also two very different people, but two people I think share a kind of unified mission. Because you know what, recruiters write like crap. We need to improve that. Here's how you do it. And this kind of started. This topic really started as a result of thinking about job descriptions. But I agree with you. We should really expand it beyond that, because job descriptions are only one form of content that recruiters create. Me and Mitch had an argument online about this actually last week about what was a job description and a job advert. We had a 500 comment kind of thread on that. So we'll definitely talk about this. The most important thing is, how do you write in such a way so that the candidate wants to read? Because it's pretty obvious that banging out a bunch of responsibilities and bullet points in the old-fashioned way no longer suffices. Okay, so I'm going to try and bring in Katrina Kibben right now. Let's see how she's doing. if I can find her there. Oh, by the way, if people want to ask questions, can you just ask them on the chat stream rather than the function to say, oh, ask a question? I know that Crowdcast asks you to do that, but it kind of makes it more difficult for the guests and us and the host to identify what those things are, and we might not get to it. So I would say that if you have a question to any of the people on screen, just ask them directly on the chat stream, and someone's going to get to it there. Okay, I'm going to go Katrina first. Mitch, I'll bring you on shortly also, so all four of us on screen. But I just want to give Katrina a bit of time to begin with and see how she's getting on.
So while you're bringing Katrina on, yeah, you've already obviously noticed yourself, there's 6 questions in Ask a Question. There's also, if you go back up towards the top of the chat stream, there's a few questions up there as well, which are to do with the main subject. So we can get back to those as well. Just one quick response to John Rose, who asked if Jacob agreed with me about should talent acquisition sit within HR. The answer was no, he did not agree with me.
Yep, that's fair enough. Oh, there she is.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you, Katrina?
I'm very well, very well. Excited to be here.
I'm really excited to be speaking with you and bringing you onto the show. It's been a little while. I've been trying to get you on for a while. Just, there's a schedule in there. I think, when can I bring Katrina on? And then this conversation started to emerge. And I thought, right, it has to happen now. So great to see you here. And it's super early where you're at right now. So I do have to appreciate getting up early in order to come onto this show. So thank you very much, Katrina.
I mean it when I say I would not miss this. A couple of weeks ago, Adam and I had this rapid fire brainstorm conversation, and then you reached out, and it was this perfect storm. I was so excited to be talking with all of you and everyone else on the line too.
Amazing. Katrina, for the few people who don't know you, I just wonder whether you could introduce yourself and what it is that you do real quick.
Yeah, so my name's Katrina Kibben. I am the founder of a company called 3 Ears Media. And I created 3 Ears Media to teach recruiters to write, which is basically what Hung was mentioning earlier. But the reason I did it wasn't because I want to fight recruiters and all of your writing is terrible. That's not the approach that I take. I think from my perspective, I look at recruiters and I think you're expected to be good at so many things. You're expected to be good at conversations, at finding people, at understanding experiences, intake with hiring managers. I can go on and on and on. So many people are not taught to write. They're not taught to write the currency of recruiting, which is a job. And so I wanted to create a firm that really focused on teaching people tactics that help them write the currency of our industry.
Fantastic. You know what? You've nailed it right there, Katrina. I've worked 10 years in recruitment, and I can tell you I've not had a single second's worth of training in how to write copy. Not a single second. It's just assumed that you go and do the job. And of course, what we end up doing is just copy pasting from somewhere else and do a replace. So I just wonder how many job descriptions might actually what the volume of job descriptions globally, what the number would be if we replaced if we actually got rid of copy paste and replaced all those 2 functions didn't exist. They'd shrink by a factor of 1,000, because we don't have time to write great stuff. We don't have the skills for it. There's professional people. It's the reason why there's such a thing as a journalist, why there's such a thing as an author. It's a really tough skill. So Katrina, on this note, give me some basic stuff, the most common things that you see that recruiters make a mistake on in terms of copywriting.
Yeah. Well, you just nailed it. They walk in and go, I'm not a writer. And that moment of kind of accepting or stating that you're not a writer puts you in the wrong place.
Mentally, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. I apologize as well for driving everyone towards that place as well, but I totally get what you're saying.
It's a lack of confidence. That's the number one thing that I see across the board. And what I tell people is, I know you're a great recruiter or you wouldn't be talking to me, because you care about how you communicate with candidates. And if you can think it and you can say it, you 100% can write it. My job is to teach you how to remove the block and give those tactics and skills that remind people that we're writing about a human. These are not wish lists from some spoiled child in corporate America who wants the magical person. Like, that's not the point of a job post. The point of a job posting is to make a candidate self-identify. It's to make them say, I can do this work and I can be successful. That's it. The rest of this is negotiable. Everything else is negotiable. And I think that's the other tip that I would want people to take away from this, is that when you're writing for someone and you are truly writing in consideration of them, everything is negotiable because it's a human.
What do you mean negotiable? Clarify that for me.
Okay, so people always come to me with rules in their head. You have to have an about us. You have to start with this. You have to have 13 bits. Oh, and the benefits require, God forbid you post a job without 18 benefits that are very average. Like, we have all these rules. And by the way, we made all of them up. All of them. There's no, ask who made up the rules.
This is resonating massively. I don't know whether that's true with you, Adam, but it's resonating massively in the sense that, writing a job description back in the day, there would be some very predictable things you would do at different segments of that document, because it had to have a call to action, or it had to have, the employer brand piece. Put the employer brand bit up here, that kind of thing. So that's very interesting. You're saying that the rules are negotiable. Very interesting indeed.
So I just want to add something to that. The rules are negotiable if you're not given templates, which of course a lot of us are.
Yes.
And should we push back on those templates? Yes, probably. If we work for some traditional business where the corporate comms team has created the templates for either job descriptions or job adverts, and there's like a boilerplate, this is always at the top, this is always at the bottom. There are benefits of this which are, you've got some kind of consistency, but at the same time, it removes most of the opportunity for personalization and, creating something that is going to appeal to different types of people. Salespeople respond to totally different things to software engineers. So you need to be, I think that the rules do need to be lifted, but a lot of people do want to work within those rules. And I actually have one really kind of just chunking up a little bit. I've got a question for you, Katrina, which is, if you would agree with me, so this is an assumptive bit, if you would agree with me that recruiters tend to be good talkers, would that not mean they've got everything they need to be good writers? They just need to write as they talk. Yeah,
100%. So I want to touch on the template thing first, because I get that question a lot. Yeah. And then I'll give you the short answer for, if you can say it, you can write it, is transcribe, use voice to text. If you feel this, I call it the stumble. You go to write something and you hesitate. You don't know where to start. You're kind of, but when you get on the phone, you know exactly what to say. Pick up your phone, turn on the voice memo, hit record, and start talking. Take that. Get it transcribed with a simple tool, Temi. There are tons of them, 10 cents a minute. Transcribe it, copy and paste. That's my quick answer on, if you know how to say it, you can write. Mm-hmm. But the templates are something that comes up a lot. I find that if you have more than, I'd say the tipping point is probably 250 employees. You have more than 250, you're starting to get to that place where companies are going, I want consistency. I want attraction. I want list, all the things that they believe that are benefit of templates. And so in those companies, I don't try to fight the war on, I want to rewrite your entire post. To be very clear. So if you work at a big company, don't fight this battle. It's not worth your time. I actually recommend that you go to a 60-40 or 70-30 model. So what I mean by that is, let your corp comm team work on 60 to 70% of the content. They're going to let them write the little about paragraph. Let you write two things, and these two things matter a lot. Okay. Insist that you get to write the first paragraph. That is I help blank do blank by blanking. I am a customer service representative who helps customers by listening, right? Something simple that tells you exactly what the job is and why it's special. The second thing that you must be in charge of are the bulleted lists. And I saw this question pass by quickly on the sidebar. The bulleted lists are not going to be lists of requirements anymore. I always say that if you learn from me, you know we don't do 3+ years requirements anymore. We don't do years even. We talk about experiences they have had that prepare them for this role. I don't care if it's bulleted. I don't care if it's a paragraph. But we're talking about experiences that help them self-identify.
You know what? This is amazing. For people who are not tuning into this, they really need to do so, because we're getting a tutorial here that Katrina would normally charge for. So this is like an amazing. Already, I'm thinking, wow, I'm completely going to change my entire thought process as to how to do it. And straight away, you're giving some ideas as to how, tactically someone inside a TA team can actually negotiate their way to getting a better job description. I just want to touch very quickly, because Mark Dubel's raised a very interesting comment here about formatting. And does formatting screw up like gender debiasing software? So he's talking about, hey, we have a policy, everything that we write goes through Textio or something like that in order to make sure that we're using gender neutral language and what have you. Now, apparently the comment is, if the layout changes, that can possibly mess up the software. Is that the case, or what?
So absolutely. They have some algorithm. I don't know a ton about their software. I didn't write it, right? But I do know that if you have more than 7 bullets, for example, it will tell you that it's leaning towards being less gender neutral, for example.
Hang on. Are you saying that the number of bullet points itself has some sort of gender impact?
That is data that they have released.
Oh, I see. So basically less bullets, more female friendly, let's say, if I can use that term. I'm not sure whether I'm navigating this correctly, but more bullets is more aggressive, more like, hey, I want this. It's like listed demands, isn't it?
Philosophically, that makes sense to me, because we know that there's a tipping point where if women don't feel 70 to 90% qualified, they don't apply, right? Where a male could be in the exact same situation and they would still apply. And there's a lot of data that shows that.
That's true, yeah.
So in my mind, if you have a very large list of requirements, you are going to get people that opt out simply because they don't meet the majority of those. However, the thing that I want to flag for anyone using automated technology like Textio or any of these augmented writing solutions. I actually have a blog post coming out on this on Tuesday, and I swear I didn't plan this. They are shit in, shit out systems. And I will say that very bluntly. I literally tested these systems. I typed the word fart. I won't lie. I sense of humor. Poor one, clearly. Immature one. I typed in fart. And on average, these systems gave me a B+. So fart is B+ content, according to them. But it also said that would be a great subject line. They gave me a 91% on that subject line. Fart, exclamation point. So the reason I say that is because you need training before you use tools. Don't buy augmented writing systems and think that they're going to make your writing better simply because you now have a tool that tells you if it's gender neutral or not. You actually have to say the right thing, and that matters.
That's again blew my mind. I thought the entire value prop of these tools, that it is going to make me better. Like, I don't need training. I'm spending money on Textio. It's going to do the job for me. But you're saying actually that's not the case. You can actually introduce some, I wouldn't say false positives, can give you like nonsense feedback because you're simply not at the standard to be able to write, to make sense of it.
Exactly. Every single person, the 3 of us included, every person on this call has been in the scenario where you get on the call with the hiring manager and you are not on the same page, where they say, that's not what I'm looking for, or this is the most important code. And you look at your job post and go, shit, it's not even on there. Those systems could never tell you that. That's our job.
Yeah.
So we have to train people on better intake. We have to train them on writing about skills, not experiences. We have to teach them to write for humans. Or that little system is going to chirp at you and give you all of these little, change this word to advanced instead of move forward. That's all bullshit if you're not even writing the right thing.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. You know what? I want to start talking about a second point. And this is actually where I'm going to try and bring Mitch on, because this is where, and we'll keep you on, of course, Katrina here. So we'll get the four of us on screen. And basically, we're making the distinction between a job description and a job advert. And we had this really amazing conversation. And I think we eventually emerged that maybe part of the reason why job copy online is so poor is because we firstly confused these two, as I did. Hands up, I confused those two. And also we came up with this concept that because of ATSs automatically integrating with job distribution platforms, they typically use the job description and they just pump it out and it becomes a job ad. So from the candidate's point of view, they're seeing what is ostensibly an internal document, not something that's been written for them in mind. A job description is typically created for an internal kind of, this is what the person does. But because the ATS themselves don't distinguish between the two, we end up pumping a lot of this stuff externally, and then the consumption of the material is, of course, by candidates who think, oh, why does everything look the same? It's super boring. Okay, I'm going to bring Mitch on. Now, this is exciting, guys, because there's actually 3 people called Mitchell who've actually signed up to this show. And none of them have actually, apart from Mitchell Smith, well done, sir. At least he's put his second name in. I've got Mitchell and Mitch. I have no idea which one's the Sullivan we want. I'm going to just say it's Mitch here. If it isn't you,
I'd love it.
If it isn't you, just come on. Whichever Mitch it is, just come on. We're going to keep you there. We'll have a chat.
Like a wheel, right? Like
it's kind of a rare name, isn't it? I mean, there's 3 of them watching this, so you know, Mitches of the world unite. Let's give you credit for that.
Oh, it's the right one.
We got it. We got it.
We really wanted the wrong Mitch first, just for.
There's no such thing as the wrong Mitch. Whoever the other Mitch is,
I wanted you to get
the right Mitch.
Still, I'm here now.
Yes. Well, Mitch, really good to see you, sir. And you're looking well. Actually, you're looking very well. Looking quite, regal for some reason. Why am I saying that? You know, you look like you look as if you're in good shape and king of the world at the moment, mate.
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm okay. But thank you.
It's that picture behind you. You look like you had a halo. The picture behind you. Get your head right into the middle of that, and you've got like it's a deity. We have a godlike figure in our midst.
This is what I felt. He transitioned, from being a human being to something bigger and better. But anyway, Mitch, for the people who don't know you, for the 1% of recruiters or viewers of Brainfood Live that don't know you, can you just quickly introduce yourself and what it is you do?
Well, I do a lot of things, but I've been in recruitment like forever. And for the last 4 years, I've been running what's turned out to be a very successful copywriting for recruiter training course, which we're in the process of taking online. And so, I've kind of become mired in the world of recruitment advertising, which is not necessarily what I was planning, but hey, you have to go where the wind's blowing sometimes. But look, writing good ads and writing good copy is something that I've taken seriously for a long, long time. Most of the time I've been in recruitment, which is 30 years. Taking it all the way back to that period, Mitch, were you always aware that the copy was unsatisfactory, or was there a moment where you realized, you know what, recruiters are just doing this, it's not working, but they don't know it's not working and they're still just continuing to do it? Okay, that's a big question. The simple answer is the world was a different place back then. When I came into recruitment, there was no internet. Job ads went out in trade magazines and newspapers, regional, local, national newspapers, and by and large were quite expensive. So people typically tried a little bit harder to make the ad work harder because it was expensive. More people took it more seriously. That's a really interesting point, Mitch. You're saying that basically the internet has devalued writing because it became easier to get published, right? In the sense, before
you'd be spending 30,000 on an advert on the Sunday Times. You know what? You better have a copywriter sorting that out, because you're spending a lot of money. Now it's like, £30 on some website, and then boom, it's out there.
Yeah, look, 30,000. That's back then that was the stuff of big company national recruitment campaigns. But just putting out a quarter page in a trade magazine 25 years ago would still cost you 1,200 quid, £1,500, which was a lot of money then. But yeah, the internet and job boards in particular made posting jobs very, very inexpensive. And so it fundamentally became about quantity rather than quality. And everyone just herded down that road. And everyone was happy for a few years. Candidates were happy because it was much easier for them to find jobs. They could do it in minutes as opposed to buying a publication and leafing through it. But eventually, the sheer weight of the shittiness of the ads basically just wore them down, because that then spread out to social media and to emails and everything else. So yeah, it's just the rate and the quality of the messaging, and let's be clear, whenever you're writing something about a job in order to persuade someone to at least inquire or to find out more about it, you're selling a job. It doesn't matter whether it appears in an ad or an email or a social media post, or in a conversation. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. And actually, thank you for taking us through the history of that, Mitch, because I hadn't thought in those terms. In the view of, print to online has, if you like, journalistic or written copywriting standards been damaged as a result of that? You got to say, yeah, it has, because we're pumping more stuff out. It's quantity. If you count the absolute number of words out there compared to what the were before, it's over exponentially more than it was before. And that actually creates a different type of mentality for the reader, because it means that they're overwhelmed and they're distracted and they give you less time. So it means that your copy needs to be tighter, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a different world back then. But look, I look back on some of the copy I wrote, 20 odd years ago, and I squirm with embarrassment at some of it. But it was still better than probably 80% of what was being put out. But I was self-taught. I just read lots of books on copywriting and used to stalk ad agency websites, just looking at their work and allowing myself to be inspired and be influenced from a creative point of view, at least. And just through reading the books, I learned some basic methodology. But I have to admit that all of that kind of coalesced and came together when I joined up with Jackie, who was a copywriter and a copywriting trainer. It's got nothing to do with the recruitment industry. And we teamed up to produce this course. And my understanding of the art and the science even of recruitment advertising has become much clearer in the last 4 years.
Can you give us some insight on that, Mitch? I mean, what is the science of copywriting? I mean, is there is there a number of words you should stick in a subject line, for instance, that kind of thing? Is there any rules of thumb we could throw in?
No, I can't get that kind of microscopic about this, but probably for me, the most fundamental element of any piece of content that is attempting to sell a job, and by sell a job, by the way, I mean to get somebody, to persuade somebody to want to find out more. Yeah, you don't sell someone on a job normally until halfway through a process, which can sometimes take weeks and numerous conversations and maybe an interview. But the most fundamental basic rule for me, and I'm absolutely right on this, I don't care if anyone disagrees, is you have to write for the reader. You have to write in terms that mean something to the reader. So you write about their own self-interest. And what most people make the mistake of, other than just posting job specs, because I sometimes see ads where people are trying to be persuasive. So they're freehanding the ad. They're still using a lot from the job spec, but what they tend to do, the most common mistake I see, is recruiters will wax lyrical about the hiring company and how great they're doing and how they're growing and how much they turn over and blah, blah, blah. Most of which is really not of much interest to most people, particularly those who are experts in something. What most people are interested in is how their life is going to be affected positively if they were to do that job. So I think, what are they going to learn? How much scope are they going to get to do more of the type of work they like? Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's training, sometimes it's the boss. It can be a ton of things, but all jobs have elements about them that if the candidate spec is realistic, there will be things that will speak to the self-interest of a particular group of candidates. And that for me is fundamental. Any job posting that doesn't quickly speak to the self-interest of the reader, to my money, is not an ad. It's an announcement.
Really good, really good. This is kind of related to a term I've learned recently, which is, was it you messaging, right? So it's basically locating the conversation to the audience rather than writing it about me. You know, and in the recruiter context, what this means is if you're waxing lyrical about how cool your company is, that's locating the conversation with me. And that's ignoring the reader. That's not addressing them. That's just really just, as you say, announcing to anybody, this is how cool we are. Whereas what you're saying is you need to do kind of you writing, like get into the audience there. How do you do that? Is there a methodology to get to that point? I mean, let's say I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. I need to figure this out. Can you give me a step one in terms of how we move forward here?
Blimey, that's a massive question. No, this is a short answer. No, I can't. Look, you have to open an ad with something that is going to grab the attention or arouse the curiosity of somebody who might casually look at it. Everyone that clicks on our job ad or sees a job ad posted on social media, they can normally see the first sentence or two, and normally that's the thing they'll look at first. So that's the opportunity to draw someone into the ad. As Katrina mentioned earlier, she said all recruiters should have the freedom to be able to write the opening part of the ad.
Right.
Yeah, and the opening part of the ad, be it one sentence or 3 words or a short paragraph, the job of that part of the ad is to encourage people to want to keep reading, to arouse their curiosity. And the best way to arouse people's curiosity is to parlay some kind of benefit to them, something that they would get out of that job potentially, because all people, you, me, everyone, is their primary concern is their own self-interest. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, it's the truth. So that's what we need to speak to. And so, yeah, you use lots of new language, and you tell them reasons why you think they might prefer doing that job to the one they're in. Then it's a question of tone of voice and writing style and sentence structure, which is probably more Katrina's area of expertise than mine.
So this is really good, Mitch. So what you're saying is there's probably a little bit of work we need to do before we write that first sentence, isn't there? Because if we're going to do kind of this you messaging, we obviously need to have an idea who the heck it is that we're addressing. So this probably disciplines the recruiter to have a stronger conversation with the hiring manager. As to your point, Katrina, you got to get better at the intake, because unless you know for sure what the hiring manager is really looking for, you're not going to be able to write that first sentence. You've got to have, if you like, a marketer would call it a persona, a basic sketch of what the ideal audience for your copy might be, ideal audience, ideal person, candidate for the job. And that can only come from the hiring manager, who I would assume would have some sort of vision as to the type of work that's required for the role there.
There's 2 really good questions you can ask to get that piece of information. I'm not saying this is 100% the answer, but I like asking, what happens on a good day? So let's say this person's having the best day ever. What's happening? And then the other question I ask is, tell me about a time when you were really proud of someone who was doing this job. Because in theory, the hiring manager and the general, like what a great day is, if they all share that, that's something that's going to catch their attention. And that's something that I like to bring to that very beginning.
That's great, Katrina.
I also have 2 questions that I ask every single hiring manager as well. Do you want to hear what those are?
100%.
First question is is the candidate we're looking for likely to be employed or unemployed?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a trick question, because most 19 times out of 20, they're going to stay employed for a variety of reasons, which we don't need.
You're setting them up, Mitch, aren't you? You're setting them up, mate.
Absolutely. Second question is, so once they've said employed, then the follow-up question is, why would somebody doing more or less this same job in another company leave that job and come and work for you? And then you have to shut up. The next person who speaks loses.
Yeah.
All right.
Amazing.
I've got a response. I've got a response to that then, Mitch. So you ask them, you've effectively said, forget about your company, focus on what's in it for the candidate.
I didn't, Adam, I didn't say forget about the company, but if you want to tell the reader something about the company, then that belongs towards the end of the ad, not at the top.
Okay, so with that in mind, then my question would be, you say to the hiring manager, why would somebody doing more or less the same job in another business want to come and work for you in this business? To me, the company and what the company's doing has to take more priority than be right at the bottom of the job advert.
Why?
Because if you're paying similar, if your EVP is pretty much the same, then the main difference is what's the company's vision or mission or purpose or product or something like that.
Okay. Sometimes it can be the product if it's the sales and marketing role potentially. But it sounds like, look, corporates don't have one brand. They don't have a culture. They have lots of micro cultures depending on the department. And that fits with my experience of being an in-house recruiter in these kind of organizations. The culture in legal and finance and HR and sales and trade marketing are all very different and are driven by lots of different things, not least of which the personality of the manager. What the vast majority of people, particularly experienced people, are most interested in is how them doing that job is going to make them better.
I agree. I agree with that. I entirely agree with that.
Right, so, but often that's down to what's going on in the department or that team rather than what's going on in the company.
Yeah. That's actually true. The immediate people around the job are the most significant people in the job, sort of for the person getting that job.
So when you open an ad which says, "Oh, my client, a dynamic market leader who employs 15,000 people," to an accountant or to a lot of jobs, it's of no relevance because they're never going to talk or meet to them. What they're most interested in is who they're going to be sat next to.
Yep. This is why actually we talked about Stack Overflow a couple of weeks ago. They were a sponsor onto the Brainfood Live, and actually they went to the extent of creating, if you like, team profiles for the job ads, so that the people applying for them could actually see who they'd be working alongside, because they understood that this is actually a critical part of the decision-making process. Adam, I'm not sure whether Mitch has answered the question fully, but I want to jump onto another thing before I forget, because Mitch has mentioned about my client, and it just occurred to me, do you write differently if you're a third-party recruiter compared to if you're an in-house recruiter? And if so, how? What? That it seems to me that you must write differently because the tense changes somewhat, doesn't it?
Precisely the question I was going to ask as well. Precisely the same question.
Okay, I'll give you a quick answer to that. Yeah, it is different. An in-house recruiter should have a lot more to write about, should have a lot more intimacy with the working environment, and it should have been easier for them to get a better quality brief. But then if the ad that they're going to write is going to be on their website, I would argue that nothing about the company needs to be in the ad because it's on their website, and people can then do their own due diligence by just clicking around the website. But yeah, the agency recruiter, particularly if they're working contingency, which is most of them, are limited in so much as they can't give too much away. But they do have one advantage, in my view, is that you do have more scope to be creative or to be more creative than perhaps in-house recruiters are going to be allowed to.
Yeah, so this is a really important point. So we understand that the raw materials are going to be more available for an in-house recruiter. because they can get access to the hiring manager, they can talk more freely, there's no confidentiality, etc., etc. They should write a more compelling advert, I would say, given all of that. However, the advantage for the agent is that they're not constrained, as at the beginning of the show, by a template. That the Marcoms might say, hey, listen, everyone's got to talk about our company like this, and they've got more freedom to be creative with the copy there.
Yeah, and look, the larger the company, the stronger the argument is that they perhaps don't have to work as hard to sell their jobs, particularly if they're well known or the brand is sort of omnipresent. For a lot of those companies, they can put job specs out and they'll work. They'll still pull.
Yeah, sometimes
candidates.
Sometimes it works in the opposite way though, because I remember doing a lot of work with one of the big London banks about 2 years ago, and they had to really focus on what they were doing in the area of digital transformation, because a lot of people were looking at that bank going, boring company, acts like it did in the 80s, and actually they were spending more money on their digital transformation than anything else, and they had like 18,000 people working in the digital transformation area alone. And so when they had to kind of really change the emphasis of what people thought about them and reverse what people were thinking. So sometimes changing opinions is
Okay, I want to just jump in because there's a bunch of questions that have been asked and not been addressed. So I'm going to try and deal with this now. So Mike Santoro, if he's still with us, he's been very patient. He's asked a load of things here. What about this? Include audio or video clips into job ads. So do we need to be like even more creative with the mixing the media, so to speak? We know that people are reading less copy in terms of they're spending less time reading text. Do we need to introduce other ways to draw the attention and explain the story? Go to you first on this, Katrina.
Yeah, so I think, again, Mitch and I said this 12 different ways. We write for a reader. You create video for a reader. You create audio for a reader. So when they say no one reads anymore, some people don't read anymore, right? I'm a copywriter. I read a lot. Mitch probably reads a lot. Both of you read a lot.
I actually don't.
And so I would say that.
I actually don't.
No, but I think it's about being considerate of the reader. I absolutely think video is a great idea if you think your reader is absolutely just loves video, and you should know that.
Yeah. So it's based on the persona again, isn't it? Like figuring out, okay, what is the ideal candidate? What kind of person is that person, and are they going to be happier to consume audio, video, whatever it might be?
Gen Z can't read, so you have to do it in emojis.
No, I disagree with that. I think
I'm only kidding. It's only a joke.
You know what? I think it's got also a little bit to do with how let's say how in demand the person might be. Like sometimes it's the ease of consumption. If it's a case that it's easier for them to consume a 5-second video, what's wrong with that? That may not be a bad way to try and do it. But if someone you're in a slightly different pace of eventually do have more time to read through copy and text, but who knows whether that's true.
In seriousness, best practice is really simple. If you want to get your message to the optimum number of people, you create it in multiple different formats, because some people like text, some people like video, some people like audio, some people like memes. The more various more variety you have in the way you communicate your message, the more people will consume that message. And that's one of the presuppositions of neuro-linguistic programming. And I think that's a really vital skill for recruiters is neuro-linguistic programming when it comes to writing or communicating in any way with potential candidates. It's a pretty obscure one maybe for a lot of people, but it's one that I think is really important.
Yeah, well, this is something that one of our previous guests, Erin Matthew, would be a fan of. She was talking about recording like video. I don't know whether anyone saw that, but recording like comedy sketches and stuff like that to entice the software developers and so forth. So I think, yeah, you're right. However, that comes at cost, right? I mean, that's quite expensive to do in terms of time. And you need to have certain personality traits and certain assets in place in order to do that, which you'd imagine a lot of recruiters will not have either the time or the assets to do either of those things.
When you say the time, do you mean the comedy timing?
I would say yes, but also the time to even shoot the video. I mean, I don't think for me it's very easy to shoot a video, but I would imagine a lot of people may not be as fluent with the medium, and I would hate for them to think they need to set up some sort of project day to get this done when copy is just right there. They can type into a keyboard and get this stuff out.
I think there's also, when I think about video, if you are a company where you hire a lot of different kinds of people, so let's say you're a Nike and you hire digital, you hire retailer, you hire design, and they're all very different experiences. I think video is a great opportunity. The second one is if there's a lot of tangibility or details that aren't obvious about the job. So an example, I've seen this kind of on the speaker circuit, the people who maintain electric lines or power lines. These are jobs where you have to be up in the air. You have to, and there's these tangible elements that maybe aren't as obvious when you say utility forester, right? That video can explain so well.
What on earth is that?
Question from Mitch. Mitch, do you think that job adverts are for job seekers, or do you think that job ads play a role in terms of do people not looking for jobs read job adverts?
Look, according to where do I start? Look, the following stat I've seen all my life, and that stat is that somewhere between 60 and 75% of people, according to lots and lots of surveys that I've seen, suggest that they would be open to a new job if something interesting came along. Yeah, I think
it's 100. It's got to be 100%. Everybody is surely.
No, it's not. There's always 20 or so percent of people that are completely happy and are just not interested at any moment in time. So, when you're putting a job out, one of the first things the recruiter needs to establish is how big is the target audience for this particular job. If it's massive, then no real effort needs to be made. Yeah. In fact, you could put barriers in the ads to actually stop too many people applying.
Yep.
But given that we're living through the lowest unemployment in a generation, I suspect the same in the US, then for most perm roles, there aren't a great deal of people who are actively on the market looking. Yeah. So basically, for me, there are three categories of candidate. There's that big group of candidates who are in jobs. They don't need to leave, but they would be open to moving if something that looked better came along. Yeah. Those people will occasionally go to job boards. According to a research I saw from Clinch, the recruitment marketing people, 60% of all job board traffic is from people who are looking for something better than their current job. Okay. So yeah, people who don't need another job will occasionally do job searches. They might had a bad day at work and they're on the train home and they'll play around, and if something grabs their attention, who knows what might happen. But then the other category of person is somebody who does need another job, either because they're unemployed or they're in a job they absolutely hate. Now, that's a small section of the candidate population, and the only people that are going to respond to job descriptions are those types of candidates. So if you think there's enough people out there who are either unemployed or in jobs that they hate, you don't need to write a decent job ad. But if you don't, then you're going to need to put some effort into it, because people who are not looking for jobs will occasionally look, and sometimes they will respond. I've had enough anecdotal evidence from people who've been on the course that have told me that. I mean, I already knew that because I've experienced it myself. But yeah,
you know what?
The other, just one last point. The other reason why it's important is that, unlike other forms of creative writing a job ad there's less places you can go creatively. But we have one massive advantage over other forms of marketing content, that we only have to find one customer. Yeah. So if you put enough effort in to persuade somebody this might be a better job than the one that they're doing, and it just attracts one extra person who might otherwise not have applied or reached out or made a phone call, then it's worked potentially. So it's all about small margins. It really is.
That's a benefit. It's also a downside because you've only got one. You've got one job to fill. That sounds like it only needs that one, but actually it's also a big problem if that one doesn't get filled. Whereas if you sell one less Rolex this month, then at least you've sold some.
Sure. All I'm saying is you've got to write the content.
Yeah.
For one person, essentially, you've got to picture that person, and if you can attract 4, 5, 6, 7 people who, because it's never just one. Hopefully, it's a decent ad. And that's one of the problems of recruitment is we're selling something that we're only going to allow one person to buy.
You know what? Really good point, because it means that let's say 99 people apply for it, 100 people apply for it, one person gets it. There's going to be 99 people that are just generally going to be at least slightly disappointed. So that's the kind of maybe we're swimming a little bit against the tide in the nature of what we're doing in the business here.
But that's why recruitment is such a difficult job. It's unpredictable. Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast.
I want to touch on a few final things because we're now kind of running close to time. If we're sort of looking at people who are writing job ads, is there a difference in terms of what the kind of platform you're publishing to? Because what I see with multi-job postings and technology that makes it more efficient to distribute jobs across a number of different sites is that it basically means that people have gone with templates and have just pinged it out everywhere. But does it make a difference, for instance, if you're writing a job ad on LinkedIn, let's say, compared to a job ad on your career page or elsewhere? Katrina, go to you first with this.
I mean, in theory, I would love for it to be different, but at this point, I just want them to be better in the first place. I don't care if you use the same one 12 times as long as it doesn't suck in the first place.
Baseline, improve the baseline, right? I get it.
Look, I think the ad aspects of the ad will need to be adapted according to the channel for sure. So, for example, sending out emails to potential candidates is a form of job advertising. But, I would recommend that when people do that, they break the content down into 3 parts. So they don't shut the whole ad in the first email. They maybe just send the initial opener just to see if there's any potential interest to know more.
Really good idea. So we take actually Katrina's point where the first paragraph is, hey, listen, you got to own that and you got to sell the story. Maybe you can just turn that into outreach kind of format. Take the more or less the kernel of that paragraph. That's your first email, and then if there's an interest, then you can start going with the detail and all the rest of it. So that's a really good point. So maybe it's a good practice. The thing might be to write the job ad out, even if you're on active sourcing mode. So I know a lot of sources would take the brief and just go and source straight away, but perhaps.
He's gone.
Oh, he was going to say something great.
What an anticlimax.
I know.
It always happens just round about now. So I guess I've got to take over. And we are going to have to close, though, because we are 2 minutes over time. But can I just quickly tell you one thing and just find out your thoughts? My favorite ever job advert was written by not a recruiter. It was written by the chief marketing officer for a company, multinational company. She just joined the business, and she started off with, "Hi, my name is this. I've just joined this company. 6 months ago, I would never have seen myself working in this industry, but here's why I've joined, and here's what I'm going to be doing, and here's what I want you to come and help me achieve." Just interested to know if you think that the concept of bringing hiring managers into your, obviously this would be for the in-house talent acquisition area rather than the external recruitment agency. Do you think that that's a tactic that is something that we should be using more? Katrina?
Absolutely. I think hiring managers are a gold mine. They are the number one convincing. We've talked about, I want to know who's sitting next to me. telling the story of who's sitting next to them is an amazing way to attract them.
Yeah. Mitch, do you think that's something that the recruitment agencies, staffing companies could also make use of, or difficult?
I think it's going to be difficult for agencies unless they've got some kind of exclusive arrangement with that particular company. But yeah, any employee testimonial, you'll know from your employer branding training that's probably the most successful, the hardest working element of an employer brand is employee testimonial. So anything related to that you can bring to the ad, absolutely. In fact, and that throws out the rule book. You can actually run an ad that is just a testimony from someone who's doing the job currently.
Yeah.
Explaining why they took the job and why they enjoy doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so listen, it's left up to me to wrap up. I want to thank you all for coming and joining Recruiting Brainfood Live today. On behalf of Hung in particular, he's the boss. Katrina, thanks so much. Your input is always a lot of fun, and really there's a lot we can learn from it as well. Mitch, loads of really practical tips there and things to think about. So again, thanks to you as well very much for joining. I know that you and I disagree with each other online a little bit, but quite frankly, when we talk in person, I agree with basically everything you say. So I always learn from you as well.
I need to improve my writing skills, Adam, clearly.
So large number of people that have signed in for this session. Lots of great feedback. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining. Next week's on a subject that Hung will tell you about all over the newsletter and on social media. I don't know what it is. I can't remember. But hopefully see you next week as well. And thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Adam. Bye, Katrina. Bye.
Bye.
All the best.
See ya.